So let us go ahead and call this meeting to order. Vita, would you call the roll, please?
Commissioner McEntee?
Here.
Commissioner Murray?
Here.
Commissioner Bailey?
Here.
Commissioner Baker is excused. Commissioner Brown?
Yeah.
Commissioner Conley? Here. Commissioner Caius?
Here.
Commissioner Bajoni?
Present.
Commissioner Skelton?
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right, so we'll go on to agenda review. Does anyone want to remove or rearrange items on the agenda? I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Moved by Vice Chair Murray,
Second.
seconded by Commissioner Connolly. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? No, motion carries. Okay, and we will move on to public open time. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons desiring to address the commission on any matter not on the current agenda. If it's on the current agenda, wait till we get to that point. All statements that require a response will be referred to staff for reply in writing or will be placed on the commission's agenda for consideration at a later meeting. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes. Is there anybody who wishes to address the commission? All right, seeing none, we'll close public open time. Our next item is a closed session. We're going to adjourn to closed session and for a few minutes, and then we'll return back here. All right, so we'll adjourn to closed session. Be right back.
Yeah. As long as you okay. All right.
Thank you. Gosh, still getting used to this mic. We are back in session. We have no reportable action out of closed session. All right, the consent calendar is next. All items calendars as consent are considered ministerial or non-substantive and subject to a single motion approval. And anyone from the commission can pull an item if they wish. I'm going to pull the minutes just to make some corrections. Anyone want to pull number 2? Okay, moved by Commissioner Bailey.
I'll second.
Seconded by Vice Chair Murray. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Consent calendar, which is just item 2, passes. Okay, item 1, do you want to, Jason, you want to make the correction?
Sure. Jason Freed, Executive Officer. Before the meeting, the chair had given us a few what I would call technical changes to the minutes, that just correcting some spelling and where commas and stuff are, and apostrophes and stuff like that. There's really only one change of significance that I would want to call out from that list, and that is in your September 12th workshop meeting minutes under section E, the work plan. The very last sentence, the end of it, the way it's worded, could give the wrong impression as to what we were looking to do with the sphere of influence. It says, as it reads right now, adoption of a countywide sphere of influence update. That could be read in a wrong way. So the suggested change I would make, and feel free to wordsmith this if you don't like it, is the adoption of the spheres of influence affecting the entire county is a way to say we're going to look at all the SOIs rather than just, we don't have a countywide SOI. It's each district has its own. So that was just a way to help flush that out a little bit better.
Okay. Everybody okay with that? Do I have a motion to approve the minutes for the August 8th meeting? Okay, moved by Commissioner Bailey, seconded by Commissioner Connolly. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.
I'll abstain.
Okay.
I wasn't present.
Commissioner Skelton abstaining. All right, we will move on to resolution of commendation for retiring Commissioner Jeffrey Blanchfield, who is unfortunately not able to be with us today because he's in. Jason, do you want to report out?
He is still having the effects from his vertigo, so is not able to make it here. Since he lives on a high hill, it's hard for him to get out right now. He is hopeful. He's in recovery and he's doing a lot better, but still not 100%. He's hopeful that he will come to the December meeting. What I would suggest is that we vote and approve the resolution. It's in the packet. When he comes in December, we can do something special for him at that time as part of the meeting.
Okay.
Or present it with him at the meeting and figure out some way to do that there then.
Okay, I will go ahead and read it, just so we have it official. Resolution of commendation for Jeffrey Blanchfield by Marin Local Agency Formation Commission expressing its gratitude for his service. Whereas Jeffrey Blanchfield has devoted his professional life to urban, regional, and environmental planning, he focused on collaborative planning processes with special districts, cities, counties, regional governmental, state and federal agencies. His work addressed resolving mutual issues of land, water use, economic and natural resource development, conservation and protection. And whereas Jeffrey Blanchfield first started with the commission as an alternate public member in 1996 and was named the public member in 2003, he served as the commission's chair from 2003 to 2018. And whereas as chair, Jeffrey Blanchfield brought an engaging and steady hand to the commission. He navigated the commission through challenging circumstances and provided leadership while maintaining high standards of excellence. He championed the Southern Marin Fire Protection District annexation of the city of Sausalito, the Richardson Bay Wastewater Consolidation Project, and MSR mandates. And whereas Jeffrey Blanchfield professionalized Marin LAFCo by supporting a move to our own office space and advocated for continued funding of our work, he supported the work of 3 executive officers and 3 interim executive officers with balanced diligence. And whereas as commission chair, he developed strong collaborative relationships with commissioners, inviting alternate commissioners to participate on committees and during closed sessions. He established the annual strategic planning workshop, created a dual annexation policy, built relationships with other county LAFCOs, and actively participated in events at Cal LAFCO. And now, therefore, be it resolved that this commission does hereby express its deep appreciation and sincere thanks to Jeffrey Blanchfield for his dedicated service to this commission and to all the people and public agencies in Marin County. And we have a similar resolution from Congressman Huffman and from our legislators, Mark Levine and Senator Mike McGuire. So
I move the resolution.
okay, moved by Commissioner Rodoni,
Second.
seconded by Commissioner Skelton. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much. Hopefully, we'll see Jeff in December. All right, item 4. Jason.
Yeah, so item 4 is an application for a detachment of a small parcel of land from the city of Novato to the unincorporated part of Marin County. Up on the screen, you will see their property. This is their, oopsie, hold on, let me get my little pointer here. I'm using the smaller one because it's a clearer picture. This is their whole parcel here. This back section, which is, you'll see the slash lines, is the part that's getting detached from the city of Novato and being moved into the unincorporated part of the county. The reason why this would be occurring is this is the street, this is their driveway and front yard. There is no access to the property other than walking across a creek on the back side of their property. What you will notice is that there is this line here, and I'll do my best to try and draw it. It's just outside of the shaded area, which is the fence line when the property owner bought the property from the previous owner. That's where the fence line actually occurred. When they were going to go fix the fence, this is when this whole issue came up of, are they in the city, are they in the county, what is the actual back property line? There is a creek back there. They have gone through a lot line adjustment with the county and as well with the city, and I will yield to them if they want to get into more details on that side. That is basically at this point waiting for LAFCo to do an approval, and I do want to make a correction to my staff memo. I think I said that the lot line adjustment has been approved. It's actually been approved, awaiting our approval of us doing this work today, or not really today, but finishing this process. So that is the parcel, and what you will see is right here is a pool on there, and actually the very edge of the pool is technically part of this thing that's getting moved over. So clearly this was done a long time ago. People thought that they knew where the lines were, everything. They have worked with the county is in support of this application. And so this is part of it. This whole property that they are in, and I wish I had access to my computer to the system, but the system's not working. I would show you is actually in an island within the city of Novato as well, which is an important thing to understand. From what I understand, should that island ever be annexed into the city of Novato itself, the property owners have agreed that they will not be opposing any sort of annexation of that. While there's not anything in play right now and is not planned to be in play anytime soon, it is still good to know that we will have on record at least one homeowner who is willing to go forward with that process and not oppose. So if we can just get another 200 or 300 more of these properties to have the same issue, maybe we'll have that island eventually annexed. One other thing I just want to note, today is an informational only hearing. There will be no action taken today as part of the process. The commission has to have an informational hearing. While this is going on, we have this out to review to the city, the county, and all of the impacted other districts like your fire, water, sewer. All of them get to have a say and give us comment back. We will come back to you in December with this as an agenda item, unless the city of Novato passes a resolution, the city council itself passes a resolution saying they oppose it, at which point by state government code, this application becomes dead and we cannot take any action. Having said that, I did get word earlier today, at least from City of Novato's staff, that they're planning to take a neutral position and not take any action whatsoever. So assuming the city council follows staff's lead, when we come back in December, their window to make that appeal, to make their objections will have ended, and we could then take an action if we so desire. It would be up to the commission whether or not they want to support at that time, but for today, all of this is an informational item. I am happy to answer any questions, and we also have the applicant and their representative here as well, so if you have any questions, today might be a good day to get them out so we can, if we don't have the answers today, at least be able to come back to you at the December meeting with any answers that you are asking today.
Any questions from the commission? Ms. Shimmery.
So Jason, so with this de-annexation, is now a new tax bill being created for this new county area, or will that just be a simple property tax exchange transfer from the city to the county for this additional area?
The hope would be that this would be a simple tax exchange. That process has not been finished yet. I mean, there's several steps in the process. That is one of the steps in the process, and that has not ran its course, but should have run its course by the December meeting. So I should have an answer for you by then, but my hope would be that everyone agrees to the simple tax exchange and that there's not anything special done with it otherwise.
Any other questions from the commission? Oh, sorry, Sloan.
Thank you. Jason, do all of the adjoining properties have a similar issue? In other words, do they all have property lines that extend into Novato?
I am not aware. This is the only application that's in front of us, and I have not gone out to look on the field to see what is going on with the other properties next to it.
Okay, I mean, that seems like it might make some sense a little bit just to have an understanding of the picture here a little bit, that's all.
I will find out the answer for the December meeting.
Go
I
ahead,
know
Chris.
you're inviting questions. Since it's an informational item only, we're not taking an action. Can we provide comments as well? Or do you want to wait until public comment and then?
Do you want to, should we, well, yeah, let's get public comment first, and then we'll do comments. Any other questions? Okay, any comments from the public, if you'd like to? If you would mind, approach the mic, because otherwise we can't hear it. Yeah, thank you.
So my name's Marcella Tate, and my mom, Janice Tate, owns the property. My family's been there for 45 years or so. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. I'm also a broker, ironically, so this has been an interesting real estate experience for me. I actually used to work here when it was Frank Howard Allen, but ultimately, you know, my parents purchased the property for their backyard. It was just kind of a funky little house, tract housing. They fell in love with the yard, and the original owners before us did get a permit through the county to have the in-ground pool installed, and the property line goes through the actual pool. So that, unfortunately, it seems like, you know, back in the 50s, there was some kind of a disconnect. So when my parents purchased the property and, you know, the original fence line existed, they didn't really have any reason to question it. Obviously, back then, there weren't a lot of disclosures, you know, back in the early 70s. The purchase contract was one page, so. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them now or in December. We'll be here then as well.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions? No? Any further public comment? No? Okay, I'll go ahead and close the public comment. And Chris, you had a comment? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Mala.
That one. Sorry about that. To the extent your comments are to help us for the actual public hearing, that would be helpful. But if they are to discuss whether you are in favor or against, I would suggest waiting until the public hearing.
Yep.
That would come at the next meeting.
Yeah. So my public comment, it actually goes kind of what we talked about at the retreat, which is an opportunity to form relationships and bridge connection to LAFCo, and this is a great opportunity because, working with the city of Novato, I would personally love to have some communication from the city that just says, we're neutral, we don't care, we think this is great, or whatever it is that they're going to end up saying. If they don't end up submitting something, I hope that either staff or the applicant can provide just a real brief synopsis of the efforts that you tried to get some information from them. That way it just rounds out the entire picture. And then I don't know if Jason, if it's appropriate for the future meeting, but I think it would be nice for the commission to understand the dynamic between moving it out of Novato versus into Novato and the urban growth boundary, and why there's an argument that this makes sense and compared to the alternative. Something for the future staff report.
I do want to address the how the city of Novato interacts with this as far as the official interaction.
Yeah.
Really, the only official interaction that they would have is if they pass a resolution saying they oppose. If they're neutral, or I guess they could take a position of saying we support and could pass a resolution. What we would likely get is something from staff, and I have received something from staff saying that they are neutral. So we've already gotten that in writing, but there's the official process that we need to let play through. And to some degree, at least if you're the applicant, you probably don't want them actually commenting on it, because if they do, they're saying they're opposed, and then this dies. So I get where you're going with what you said on that part of it. I just want to be that we do have some communication, have been talking with their staff.
Got it.
Any other comments, questions? Okay, thank you. Does Commissioner Skelton need to recuse himself from item number 5?
I will recuse myself
Okay, go
because
ahead.
I do plan on submitting an application and being considered for the seat. So
Okay.
I'll step aside.
Jason, will you give us the staff report, please?
Sure. So on this item, as you all are aware now, our public seat member in the regular seat retired from the commission, and so now we are faced with how do we replace the commissioner. One of the added little twerks to this system, as is in my staff report, is that we also happen to have that seat coming up in May of next year. So we have to both fill a short term, which is for 7-8 months potentially, depending on exactly how the process, how quickly we move on the process, as well as the full 4-year term coming up basically the beginning of next year. What you will see in my staff report is the commission has some policies on how it can move forward. One of them, staff and legal counsel do not believe follows the state government codes on it, so would not recommend us taking. The other two, one of them is not really applicable to this right now, which is if we had an application pool within the last 12 months, we could draw from that application pool to try and fill the seat. We have not had an application pool within the last 12 months from the records I can find at least. So that leaves us one option. If we want to try and fill the seat, we need to put out a public notice, go through the public process. Now, given that there's such little time left on the current term, and we would naturally be starting the process anyways for the new term, what staff is recommending, let's go through this process once rather than twice. And the question I will leave on the table for you is if we go through this process once, we put out one announcement, we make sure the announcement's very clearly worded that we are both doing the short-term and the long-term seat. The question is, do you want to do one set of interviews for both of them? It is staff and legal counsel's opinion that if we do one set of interviews, we should wait until our first meeting of 2019 to do those interviews, because otherwise it's a little bit far out for the new seat when the full 4-year seat is filled. So I would encourage you, and I would yield to you if you wanted to do it, we could put out an announcement by our December meeting. You could be doing interviews for the short-term seat. If you wanted to do one set of interviews, not have to interview everyone twice, we could potentially just wait until the February meeting to actually do interviews. And if I announce it that way, legal counsel and I are in agreement that that would be an easy way to do it, and it would be well within our rights to do. So you'd be filling basically a seat for a couple of meetings. And in the meantime, as long as Commissioner Skelton shows up, we do have a full body and we do have a public seat available to be used. That's one of the purposes of the alternate seat, is to fill in. So it's not like we'd be going empty with a seat not being filled by somebody. So I will yield to the commission as to what its desires are, and we'll act accordingly.
Craig?
So Jason, on this interim period, we're talking 1, 2 meetings, December and possibly February, is that correct?
That would be correct.
By our bylaws, are we required to have a public member present for board meetings to have a quorum?
No.
Matt?
What has happened at the end of the term? Let's take Chair Blanchfield, for instance, at the end of his 4-year term. What is the process of his continuation?
If this seat were naturally coming up and he had not stepped down, we would be doing, according to the policy handbook that we have, we would be doing interviews in April, making a decision in May. So you're basically pushing that process up by 1 meeting if you waited until February.
It's actually not my question.
Oh, sorry.
So if he's serving his 4-year term, his term is expiring, but wants to continue on, is it a reapplication or is he just
Yeah,
continuing?
we would have to go out for a brand new application. Every 4 years for the public seat, we go out for a new application process. Everyone has
For
to apply.
everybody.
Yes.
Every public position?
Every public, yeah, so this commission, and this is one of the things we could discuss, not today, but like in the future when we're thinking about how the commission wants to run, is this commission has its alternate and its regular seat on different cycles. If you were to put them both on the same cycle, you would be doing all the seats at the same time. We do it on separate cycles. So this, in 2019, we do the regular seat. In 2021, the alternate seat would naturally come up.
And typically, does an incumbent have advantage, or is he completely at will?
They are completely at will. If they have pleased the membership of the rest of the body, then they would get, could potentially get reappointed. I mean, Jeff was here for 20 plus years, so clearly you can get reappointed and there's no term limits. The one thing I will point out is the way the state government code works on appointments is in order to get appointed, you both must have 50% of the body, but you also must have one person voting from each of the 3 representative groups. You have to have 1 county seat, 1 city seat, and 1 special district seat voting for that person. So at the end of the day, you need 4 votes, but you have to have 1 of each of those types of people voting for you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yeah, Dennis?
Jason, could you please talk about the process for advertising? I think I heard you say advertise once, but I wanted to make sure that we do
What we would do is there are some rules within the policy that would be followed. But to give you a high level, we would put out press releases. I would be, emailing out to our entire distribution list that gets our information. I would be sending all of you quick little blurbs that you can put into your newsletters or email groups or Facebook groups or get out to your various groups as well. So the goal would be to blast this out to as many people as we can and continue to advertise it as best as we can for as long as we can until the application period ends.
Thank you.
All right, is there any public comment on this item?
Question, what, from an efficiency, we're talking about efficiency here and timing and things. Hypothetically, if I did get appointed to the public seat, then there would be a vacancy for the alternate seat. Is there an opportunity to, I guess, or potentially if I didn't get select, well, I guess I'm wondering about efficiency and whether or not there's an opportunity for, I don't know, enhancing that and picking 2 applicants.
Okay.
I don't know. So,
I don't think you lose your alternate seat by applying for the other.
You don't, but Mala, do you have a?
No, you're correct. You don't lose your alternate seat if for some reason you didn't get the public seat. But if you were placed into the permanent seat, then we would need to go through the process to fill the vacancy.
And we'd be able to use that pool of applications.
We're just discussing if we could fit within that subsection A, except we hadn't advertised it to fill the alternate vacancy, so that's something we'd need to
Yeah.
double check. We may need to go through the process.
Yeah, the question that comes into play is we advertise, the state rules are you have to advertise when the seat becomes empty. So the question is, if we advertise it as just a regular seat, not the alternate, would that be the same advertisement?
Okay, all right. Dennis?
I'll move.
Um,
Well, I have one more
oh,
question.
go ahead,
And when the seat becomes empty, or the end of the term?
Yes, this process is from the state's perspective, it's a little bit different within our policy handbook, but from the state's perspective, you use the exact same process to fill the seat, whether it's for a temporary or for full-time, you have to put out the announcement and advertise it. There are, we have a little bit longer process than what the state requires, but it's okay for us to be longer. The state requirement is we have to wait at least 21 days. After that, it becomes quiet as to how long we have to actually make the appointment itself.
Got it. Thank you.
Dennis?
So I'm willing to move the alternate that staff recommends, but instead of immediately announce, I think you want that to be later in the year that you announce, or is this immediate?
I would say the sooner we can get it out, the better, because that will give us a longer period to recruit applicants. The question is, if you wanted to wait until February, what I would be doing is I would say, you turn in your application by January 3rd or something like that, and we just give people a little more time to do it during the holidays.
Okay, so I'll move staff recommendation then to announce only the current public seat, open seat, and stay on to track the announcement for the new year, next year.
So I'm sorry, the
It says-
recommendation is to do the short term and the full term at once. Is that what you wanted, or did you want
No,
an
no.
alternate option where you only announce the current?
I'm reading this as alternate option. There's two of them. Have staff immediately announce only the current public open seat and stay on track to announce the new seat next year.
Okay. So that would be announcing Jeff's vacancy, the short-term vacancy only. Is
No,
that-
I think we want to do both at the same time.
You want to do both? Okay, so
I thought this
that's
included
staff
both.
recommendation number, yeah, if you could number them in the future, that would be helpful.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
will remember them in the future, my
Yeah.
apologies.
yeah,
The alternate
So why don't
twice, that me.
why don't we stay with the motion as,
okay,
I'll revise that if you like.
please.
go for it.
So I would move staff recommendation.
Which is,
Have staff announce both the remainder of the current term and the new term of the public seat simultaneously.
Okay,
second.
all right. Moved by Commissioner Rodoni, seconded by Commissioner Connolly. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Jason, item number 6, please.
So item number 6 is basically what I would consider the follow-up to the workshop that we did in September. This is after all the comments you made, after all the discussions that we had. I tried to pull all that together and put together a new vision statement with the chair's help. She did a very good job in helping craft that in a good way. So make sure you're looking at, in the attachments, you'll see the new vision statement in there, which is very similar to what we had before, with the addition of the value-added approach of wanting to make sure that we're adding value to the community and to our districts that we represent. So that is added in there. And then I also then updated the MSR schedule based on our discussions. I did leave the fire and police undated within the schedule. I want to have a sit down and have a discussion with both fire and police for a countywide approach to see what it is we would actually be doing, so we could figure out where best to put that into the system and figure out what it might take, because those could become very specialized in nature, and it may be that we need to go out and find consultants to do it, at which point we need to have a discussion about budgetary items and how we would do it that way. So I wanted to be a little more cautious on those two as to where we put them in. But we will be coming back to you at a future meeting to say, here's the discussions I've had with fire and police. And then the last part, which I think is the bigger part of what I wanted to have a discussion about today, is the new work plan. You will see that as I've done with a lot of things, have kind of used a new format to show how the work plan is going to work. I like having living documents. I viewed the last document as more of a, here's what we're doing, and it got very little updates to it. It was more, we started something, we finished it, and that was all you really got. So my goal is to have more of a spreadsheet style format, get the information in there, and when you look at the attachment for that, and I want to encourage you all to be looking at that right now, is you will see that I list the basic project, who's responsible for the work. I think it's very important so people understand, is it staff doing it? Is it maybe the committee that's responsible for it? In some cases, it may be a joint effort of staff and committee being responsible. And I did leave some question marks in there because this is still a draft, and I wanted to get your feedback on what you thought would be going on. You will see later on in the agenda when we're kind of going down the MSRs. The first 2 MSRs I'm going to be proposing that we have Plan West Partners, which is a later discussion item, so we don't need to have that right now, be the folks that do that. work to keep us on track and on board, which we'll discuss later. And then after that, we get into the sphere of influence updates. As you know, we are working on two potential consolidations, which is all at the staff level. And then we get into stuff such as, the County of Marin transferring support services to LAFCo. We're, for lack of a better term, in a friendly divorce with the county. We're going to be taking care of ourselves a lot more. And so that will require, as we're going through that process, to potentially have new policies. So I will be working on some of it, but some of it will potentially have to go to the policy committee or the Policy and Personnel Committee, because we might need to create new policies for LAFCO to deal with. So that's, as you're going down that, you see that now. Where I do get some question marks in here is the disadvantaged unincorporated communities, or DUCs. Once again, that is staff. We could potentially have that go to a Policy and Personnel Committee, or that might be something very specialized that maybe a few of you want to work on, and we could potentially create an ad hoc committee just to focus on what we should be doing as LAFCO as a DUC. And it could fall outside of one of the committees, because to me, it didn't necessarily fall perfectly within a committee, but we could stick it there, or we could potentially, like I said, do an ad hoc and set something up on the side to work just on our DUCs. Similarly,
Get our ducks in a row, as it were.
yeah, as they like to say in LAFCO land, get your ducks in a row. The other one is the application packet. I think it could be useful to have an update of that as well. Once again, staff could work on it, or we could potentially have an ad hoc committee if there were enough commissioners interested in doing that. And then and so you have the list. I don't want to go too long into the work plan. Hopefully you've reviewed it. So any comments or suggestions you have on changes, things that you think maybe I forgot, I'm happy to add or subtract. And like I said, this is going to be a living document, so over time, you're going to see potentially new things added to the work plan as we're moving forward. Of course, anything added to the work plan will be because the commission wants to add it, not just me adding it myself.
Go ahead, Craig.
So Jason, just a general question on the Santa Fe study area, Novato study area, there are CSAs listed. Is now all the Novato and Santa Fe areas, notwithstanding the CSAs, included in this description?
Yeah, if you look, if you actually go a few pages up, right above actually the work plan in the packet is the schedule of the NSR, and listed under San Rafael gives you the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 CSAs that are in the San Rafael one. There are 3 CSAs in the Novato one. There's a CSD as well in the Novato one. So those will all be included in that study. And the way we're going to be approaching those studies, when they're area studies, is we're looking at it from a citizen's perspective of, I am a citizen who lives in this area, how does all these services in all these different districts impact me as a private citizen or as a business, as someone at that level.
Just to follow up, I know like Lucas provides fire service, private fire service to a public area. And now those sorts of services provided to residents in areas, is that something LAFCO would be reviewing?
Yes, Lucas, if you're referring to CSA 13, that is part of the San Rafael study area, so that will be included.
Okay, so even those private service within that public area?
Yes, as long as they fall under, without you telling me exactly like the district name or number of it, I would.
It might not fall, it might not fit exactly. I just want to make sure that perhaps other commissioners may be aware.
Well, I mean, Lucas Valley is different from the George Lucas Empire and his ranches out there.
Sure.
So I think you guys aren't.
Right,
So it's a private fire
correct.
department.
That's.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Okay, so you're saying, now I understand. That would not fall under LAFCO necessarily, but I would talk with legal counsel after this meeting and see if there's a way that we can incorporate that into the system. And if we can, we will, if
I would
that's
think
your
you would
desire.
just, if it exists, you would just maybe perhaps describe it, but not,
Yeah.
or indicate, that it exists, but not have to go into what.
Okay. Yeah, no, that is, yeah, we could definitely do something of that nature. It's a question of how in-depth you wanted us to go. If you just want to say, this exists here, it falls outside the purview of LAFCO's control or oversight, we could definitely put stuff like that in the MSR.
Right, service provider.
Yes.
Thank you.
And you went, on the page that has the vision statement also has our goals and objectives, which
yes.
did change significantly too. So if you can also take a look at that and make sure that that is, the goals and objectives are, that we captured what we all talked about at the workshop.
Comment?
Yep.
Yeah. So, Jason, just looking at your schedule, so it looks like in the next 5 years, only the Resource Conservation District is included, so that means there's 7 districts that would not be in this plan in West Marin. Just so everyone's aware of that. I don't think it's a big deal because they don't change very much, but
That would be correct. I mean, basically, this schedule is the old schedule, just with the updated years because we fell behind. So if there's something you want to add or change to it, now's a good time to do it.
I think just recognizing it.
Okay.
That there's 7 special districts that aren't included in this 5-year plan, so it means they would come in the next round somewhere. The only other little correction is on the bottom of the left-hand column on your draft schedule, or your draft study schedule, it said policy service study. I think you mean police.
Oh, sorry.
You confused me, and I was trying to figure out what that was.
I was wondering about that too.
Earlier tonight, you started.
Good catch.
talking
Thank
about
you,
it.
Dennis.
Thank you for that catch.
Okay, is there any public comment on this item?
Sorry, I
Oh,
wanna
I'm sorry,
actually-
Chris, question.
I want to, follow up on Commissioner Rodoni's comment about missing a couple of special districts over in West Marin. We've looked at what does the law say and what does it require, and everyone's acknowledged that it's almost a practical impossibility to do MSRs for all of these various entities. But one of the things I think we talked about a little bit at the retreat was, the MSRs don't have to be a mile deep. They frankly, some of them might only deserve an inch of review because there haven't been a lot of changed circumstances. And so I think, I don't know, to the extent that we're setting, lofty goals, I'd say maybe try and find a way just to fold in those missing districts so that at least they're identified on a work plan. They don't, fall behind somehow. And we're demonstrating a intent to comply with our mandate.
Jason, would we, by not covering those, would we be out of compliance? I guess it's looking at how long it's been since we.
We may be under technical non-compliance, but it's pretty common for LAFCOs to not be doing their best to do this within 5 years. And as you indicated, you don't need to go a mile deep. So I think as long as we're showing some plan of action, I think we're in good stead.
Dennis, do you feel strongly about adding anything? Okay.
No, I think it's fine.
Okay.
To your suggestion, the only thing you could possibly do is just extend it out a few more years, showing where those would occur, even if you go out an extra 5 or whatever it takes to show the whole format.
No, that's acceptable. Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. All right. Is there any public comment on this item? Okay. No public comment? No? Okay. Seeing none, I will bring it back to the commission. Entertain a motion. We can do it all in one, or we can do them separately, whatever you'd like.
Quick question for you.
Yep.
Is there any desire around the question marks, the 2 question marks I had on there on creating ad hoc committees would be probably the one thing I would like to see if there's some clarity on today. If not, we can always change it and redo it later. That's not a big deal to me. If there's anyone's thoughts on those 2 question marks of adding ad hoc committees.
On whether we want the local definition of disadvantaged unincorporated communities.
Correct.
And what was the other one?
And the application packet.
Application packet. Okay.
I think the DUC ad hoc subcommittee sounds interesting, and we should think about exploring that. I think with the application subcommittee, frankly, you guys at staff level are the ones that experience it on a day-to-day or whatever week-to-week basis, and you'd be probably best suited to know what kind of information or updates are appropriate for application materials. So I'd say probably not worthwhile having an ad hoc committee for that.
Anybody have any strong feelings about wanting to be on an application packet committee? No? What about ducks? I would think, Dennis, you might be interested in that?
Yeah, I'll do that.
Okay,
I'd be interested.
okay. So it sounds like you,
I'd be interested as well.
okay. Can we have 3?
Yeah, you can have 3.
You can have
and
3.
Yeah, 3. I wouldn't go beyond 3 because then you get into a
Right.
quorum of the body. So
Okay. So it sounds like you have an ad hoc committee.
perfect. As long as that's part of the motion.
All right, anybody want to make the motion?
So I'll move that we have a ad hoc committee for the definition here at Marin LAFCo.
And then do you want to do the rest, approve the mission and vision statement?
And approve the mission statement, vision statement, MSR study schedule, work plan for fiscal year 18-19 and fiscal year 19-20, with any amendments the commission wishes to make to the documents which you so have heard.
Okay, moved by Vice Chair Murray, seconded by Commissioner Caius. Any, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay, Jason, item 7, please.
Yeah, item number 7 is now working off of the fact we just approved an MSR schedule, is to how do we actually start moving forward on getting our MSRs done. Reality is this, we are already more than a quarter way through the current fiscal year. We are not fully staffed yet. We will be a while before we get fully staffed. The best option for me and my recommendation is that we use our contract with Plan West Partners, which brings you my services, but part of that contract also allows us to use them to do some MSR work. I would suggest that we take both the San Rafael and the Vado studies to do this work. And you'll see in there that there's a proposal from them to do that. It'll cost us about $85K to do both studies. And so my recommendation is to use them to do it. As we're getting new staff on board, they would then start taking on next year's MSRs. But even if we get them before the beginning of next year starts, let's keep in mind our value-added approach. We will likely have one or more SOIs that someone's going to say, we actually want to have a discussion about updating. We will then have staff that could look at that. We will potentially also have areas that are farther down on the list that maybe say, hey, you know what, we actually need our MSR done sooner rather than later. So we could utilize the new staff to start working on any of those one-offs, as I like to call them, for the MSRs that are going to be off schedule, because as our value-added approach states, we want to try and help them whenever we can. So I think that we will have more than enough work to do for staff. When you look at our budget, because of all the staff changes and all the what's going on, we actually ended last year with quite a bit of money left over. So we could utilize some of the money that was left over from last year's budget to pay for the MSR work. It'll keep us on track. It'll keep us on schedule. I will also note that, so you're all aware that weren't at Cal LAFCo, Plan West Partners, George, who is the partner of Plan West Partners, he actually received the staff award over Keene. He beat him out. But he got it partly because of the work that he's done for other LAFCOs and doing their MSR work as well. So I have a lot of faith and a lot of belief that he can get the work done. He and his team, it's actually not just him, it's actually his whole team that will be working with us, can get this work done. It's within the scope of the work. It was partly what we brought Plan West on to do, is to help us get back on track because we were behind schedule. And I think that this will give us that capacity and ability. In talking with George, he seems to think it'll take about 6 months to complete the MSRs. Partly give or take a little bit because we're going to be starting it when he needs to do a lot of his data collection during the holiday season. So it might need to fudge that a little bit, but I think that we can get that stuff done and be on time and be on schedule. And so if you have any questions on it, I'm happy to answer it. You do have a scope of work and some basic information he's doing there. One of the things you will notice is he is taking some of our old work and not repeating it, but pulling it into this MSR because we just did do a wastewater study. So there's no reason, if we're looking at it from the citizens level of how does a person in San Rafael feel, we don't need to redo the wastewater area. He's just going to pull that in and make that part of the report that he does and pull the information out. He does not write super thick reports, and we've told him that. One of the things that Sashi and Craig and I talked to him about at the conference, because he was there as well, was making sure that when we're coming out of that MSR, that we have a work plan for us. Like, here are the steps, here are the things that we need to do. We actually threw some curveballs at him, and I think he came back with some very good answers, and I will let the chair and vice chair disagree with me if they so desire, on like, what about this or what about that? And I think he had a very good, quick understanding of what was needed, and I think we'll do the good work. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Jason, also, can you talk about what Plan West's role is versus what your role is in this process?
Sure. Plan West will be doing a lot of the research and writing. We will do an initial meeting with all the districts that the MSRs are covering. He will participate in that. I will participate in that. I will be the one that goes out and does all the public collection, like go out to all the community groups. So if any of you have community groups that I should be meeting with, please make sure I have their contact information. I know we have some in file, but just to double check, if there's anyone that you think I should be meeting with, I will be the one going out, collecting the public relations side of it, pulling that data in, bringing that back to George for as he's writing, he and his team are writing it. I already actually, there's a couple people who will tell you I met with them yesterday. They're already super excited about the fact we're doing an MSR. and we've already had some discussions about what they would like to see in it. And so I will be passing those notes on to George. So as he's doing the report, he can incorporate that into it. One of the things that I am very personally, when I was in San Francisco, I always, when we had consultants doing reports, is always made sure they had the freedom to write the report that they were comfortable presenting. So I don't interfere with his report in that way, but I do give him feedback as to what's going on the ground, what's happening here in the county, so he's aware of what that is, so he can, to the best of his ability, incorporate those things into an MSR and is well aware of it. I will be the one at the end of the day that goes out and does presentations to all the, to the degree any of the two city councils want to meet with me, or any of the boards of any of the special districts want to have me out, I will be offering myself and going and talking to them about what an MSR is, what we're looking to do, collecting all that information, and then once again passing that on to George. George is much more about the data collection and the writing of the report, the technical side of it. I will be more the public face of the report, so I get to take all the credit while he does all the hard work.
Okay, any questions? Craig?
Yep. So Jason, thank you for that summary. And, we did meet with George, and it's very good to have someone of that caliber recognized at a state level of the type of work they do, coming to Marin and helping fill our gap. We don't have an analyst. We have minimal staff. We have immediate needs. So it seems like it's going to be a really good fit. And I agree, George was very open to us. One of the things I saw as a deficiency in our MSRs was kind of a next steps, an action. Okay, we've done all this work, we've done all this analysis. What are the next steps? What should these local government groups be doing? So if somebody else picks up this document in 5 years, then there's a summary. So George seemed very open to that, and I think he's going to develop some sort of page or summary sheet so we could quickly, or anybody else, go to that and see basically what the guts of the document is and where we're going with it. So very happy with it, and looking forward to the reports.
Mala, could you also just talk about, we have a contract with them already and what the scope of that contract is?
We have an existing contract with Plan West, and it does provide for doing these services. It's just that the commission has to authorize it. So we don't need to modify our contract with Plan West to provide for these services. It's just that you have to authorize the work.
I have a question about the analyst job then. Would we postpone any action to find an analyst with these two big projects going on by private consultants, and perhaps what the budget impacts are for that if we're looking for an analyst and we're having these two large contracts? So
Sure. As far as the budget impacts, I don't view there being a budget impact on our current budget, because what I'm planning to do is use some of our leftover money from last fiscal year, which will more than cover actually what we would need to pay to do this work. So from a budget perspective, I think we are 100% fine and actually still have money left over. From a hiring perspective, it's going to take me a little bit of time to put together the job announcement and do all that stuff. I would imagine that we would hopefully be bringing someone on in, February, March timeframe, which gives us enough time to get them onboarded, get them comfortable, not be throwing them like day one, go write this huge MSR, get them comfortable, but also to help do some, as I mentioned at the beginning, do some of the, if we have any one-offs, if we have an SOI that needs to be updated, they could potentially be helping with an SOI that's, someone says, hey, we want to have a discussion about that. Or I know that Commissioner McAtee has mentioned in the past, maybe Strawberry might be looking to do something and might need their MSR done sooner. We could utilize that staff person to do that one-off report before we get into the crux and the meat of the big MSRs that would be coming up next year. So I'm not going to say that I'm delaying the process, but it's also going to take a little bit of time, especially with the holidays coming up, to actually get someone on board. So I still plan on moving forward. It's just realization we're not going to have anyone on board this fiscal year or this calendar year. It'll be sometime next calendar year when that staff person comes on board.
I have a question and comment. First, is it possible to get an example of an MSR that he did recently so that we could see kind of the work product and the quality and things like that?
Yeah, I can forward you one. I can get one from him and forward it to you. That's not a problem.
Yeah, if you could send that out to everyone, that'd be great.
And then my comment is, I'm very supportive of this. I think we absolutely need the outside consultant, especially for these two larger projects. I do have a little concern about the lack of definition for the cost. And I analogize it to, if you were hiring an architect to design something, this is kind of a big design, they would go through conceptual design, design development, and then probably like a construction design. Here, and there would be benchmarks associated with that, that this phase is going to cost 10,000, this is going to cost 15, and then 25 or whatever. It just seems like there's a bottom line number, and I'm a little concerned that there isn't, not a check and balance, but that there isn't a check-in opportunity to see how are you doing, where are you in the process, how are you looking in terms of numbers, and I'd be a little concerned that we might get a product that cost 45 grand and it not necessarily meet our expectations, or it's draft one and then we say, hey, we want to give you direction on more improvements, and we've run out of runway in terms of the cost for that. Is there a way to build something like that into the agreement?
Yeah, we could build it into the agreement. I mean, I've already had discussions with George about this, and there are going to be clear check-ins. We're going to have regular check-ins with him. As far as like the exact cost of will this stage cost that much? That's it. I don't necessarily want to. Not my style to get into that level. We have a not to exceed, and he has a work product to deliver to us at that not to exceed rate. We could have a discussion if he's not delivering at some point during the process. I can then shut it down and say, wait, you're not giving us the product we want. Stop doing any work while we have a discussion about what we want to do next. So there are off ramps in some ways for me to be able to put those brakes on the system.
And I raise it just in this context. I think our MSR from last year was very comprehensive. I think got nominated for Project of the Year at the Cal LAFCo conference. But the first iteration we got wasn't the final iteration, and I have to imagine that there was a significant delta in staff's time and effort between what was kind of perceived as probably the final work product and then what ended up being the final work product. And so I just want to make sure that there's sufficient buffer in there so that when we do ultimately adopt it, and this is going to be a document that a lot of people rely on, that we get the highest and best document at the end of the day.
So Mala, how are they billing on this? There's an hourly rate. There are several hourly rates in the contract, and then are we billed monthly, or it's just to Chris's point, like is there there are 5 different tasks listed here.
They do bill on an hourly rate, and I'm just double checking in their contract on how they charge us. I presume it's monthly, but I'm going to double check.
I seem
Yeah,
to
they do
think
provide
it's
us
a
with
monthly
bills.
bill. Yeah. So at their and you're proposing that these are not to exceed amounts, right?
That is correct.
So then, Jason, you could, at each stage here, you could give us a check-in on where we are.
You'd be getting check-ins more frequently than that, but yes, I could do it at each stage if you wanted.
Yep, go ahead.
So, 5 tasks on each of the MSRs: regional setting, agency profile, service evaluation, determination, draft report, public review, final report, and adoption. It seemed reasonable, what Chris had brought up, to have a schedule and then a percentage billing of each of those task areas, make sure they're on time and on budget. I think our executive officer would monitor that and let us know.
I think, just to reemphasize, Jason, you're still responsible for creating the MSRs. And just like the responsibility you have as managing a staff member, if the staff were out doing the MSRs, you have the responsibility for managing the consultant. So back to Chris's point about quality of the product, you're responsible for the quality of the product regardless of what tool and what resource you use to do that.
Absolutely.
Right, so there shouldn't be a problem.
Sloan.
Do we have a copy of the contract in our packet?
You do. It's under item 9.
Thank you. But the item under number 9 has to do with the professional services agreement.
Are you looking for the scope of services that they're going to do for
Yes.
the, oh, sorry, that is under number
No, I'm
7.
looking for the only agreement that I found in our packet had to do with, the exhibits A and B had to do with the, the professional services agreement for that item, number 9, the business item, not what we're talking about here, which is these 2 projects that you're going to hire for $85,000.
The contract, and if legal counsel wishes to object to this, I will stop speaking. The contract allows us to hire them to do other services as long as we get commission approval. And that's what I'm here for today, is to get commission approval to do these other projects. So it's not really defined in the contract as what the other projects are, because we weren't sure what the project would be exactly. We now know what the project is I'm taking to you for approval, which is the work plan. That's what you're then thereby approving for today, to give me the ability to start working with them on this.
So we don't have either a scope of services unless you want to use their bid or their proposed cost, and we don't have a schedule of charges or payments other than that single line item at the bottom of their 2 bids, right?
So the professional services agreement has a scope of services, and it has multiple bullet points, and one of them is collection of data, preparation, submittal, and presentation of MSRs, as approved by the commission. And then Exhibit B of that same agreement lists out an hourly rate depending on who's doing the work. So you have that in the agreement, and then you have the proposal they have submitted, which gives you the 5 tasks and then the not-to-exceed amount.
I don't know, I agree strongly with some of the comments here that we ought to have some limitation or some control over that. I trust our staff to do the right thing, and I trust that they know what they're doing, and you've made clear that they're obliged to get it done properly and on time and all that. I don't fully follow why we couldn't have had a written out scope and a not to exceed in a manner that you're proposing, so that we could just have a look at it before today. I'm happy to entrust it to your judgment, but I would, for example, the documents you gave us, it's pretty summary. For example, the Novato Regional Municipal Service Review, it has these different things to be done, these 5 tasks that are a single paragraph each, and then there's a single line item, proposed cost, $40,000. Is that going to be nearly identical to what the scope that you're going to type up in a sort of more formal way to supplement the existing Exhibit A for a completely different contract? Or how are you going to limit this in a way so that we have some control over them doing the right thing?
What you have in the packet is the scope. So if you do want more detail or you do want costs associated with each task, then we could seek that. But this is the scope for each of the projects.
So where it says proposed cost, that should be equated to and not to exceed.
That would be the not to exceed.
When
it does
they did
not
the scope, they gave me, here's what we expect. And then if you look at my staff memo, I put in the staff memo, this is the not to exceed amount. So they were giving me, here's what we're saying it's going to cost, and I am turning that into a not to exceed amount. When I did a comparison of how much they were charging us compared to what other MSRs have done, there was a study or someone that did some research like 2 or 3 years ago. They found that for MSR, I looked at MSRs that were about the same size as far as how many different districts and cities and stuff you were looking at. They range from 5,000 to 5,300. When you look at how much we're being charged, they're about 5,000 per district, which is equivalent to what was being charged 3 years ago when that study was, when someone did the research to find that out. So I feel if anything, we're getting a little bit better deal because inflation you would think we would actually be paying a little bit more than what they paid 3 years ago. So this, I think, falls within how much these normally cost to do. They are, when you're using outside consultants, they're not necessarily cheap, but they're also, it's what you would pay if you were to have an analyst and all they were doing was working on 2 MSRs, which is a good portion of what an analyst does. That's what you'd be, potentially be paying a staff person as well.
No, I'm not objecting to the concept here
Okay.
or even the dollar figure. What I'm objecting to is sort of the definitions.
And the
So-
mechanics of the contract. is what
Yes,
we
so
were-
for example, task number 4 is to present a draft report to the commission for discussion, right? And task 5 is to present a final report at a hearing. So there's a draft report at a workshop for discussion and a report at a final hearing for those 2 tasks. What if it takes more than 1 meeting? What if the final report is inadequate? Those are things which you would know better than I, since I have the least experience on the board here, but doesn't it sometimes take more than one meeting to get to the bottom of it? So if I were them, and I brought as good a report as I could do to a meeting, and then we all talk about it, and we say, well, I think it needs to be different in the following particulars, and there's enough public input that we want to consider it again, so they come back for a second meeting, I would object that I'm entitled to charge you, as your vendor, more money now because I only promised to provide you a draft report and present at a single meeting. Then, let's say they go back the second time and they come up with a final report. Okay, we're done it. But at the final meeting, we have problems again. So there's a second final report and a second final meeting. Does that allow them to now exceed the proposed cost to some number that's higher than that?
I would say no. And if at some point in time they were not doing the work that we were wanting, I would be taking them off the project and finishing it myself.
But if you have a not to exceed amount of $40,000 and it anticipates a single draft report and meeting and a single final report and meeting, and it takes multiple reports and multiple meetings, how do you keep them at a not to exceed amount?
I would be working with them to make sure they did not exceed that amount, and that would be on me to figure out how to make sure it works in a way that works within the budget. And if we're getting to the point where we're getting I get where you're getting stuck on the word a report or a final report. There will be a final report. There's only one final report that's ever done. I would never present multiple final reports. It's one final report that you approve. That's when the drafts become final. So I get where you're going with this. That becomes on my responsibility to make sure that they're at what, and the way it was written, I would hope that they would only need to come here once, but if they need to do 2 meetings, they will do 2 meetings. I was actually, before this meeting started, talking with MCE, their technical people, to find out, can we turn this, since this room has such good video stuff, can we turn it so instead of them coming to our meeting, we can teleconference them into the meeting, they can talk to us remotely, which will save some money and time for them and be more cost effective for this commission. So I'm already looking at ways to make sure that we stay within and under budget. And to be blunt, that becomes on me to make sure if they need to come back for more than one meeting, I can make sure that they're available for more than one meeting. I don't think that's going to be a problem to George. He's very easy to work with, very friendly, willing to do whatever it takes to get the job done, as I think he has shown with the help and support that he's given to this commission by figuring out how to help you find a staff person as well. So
I don't mistrust your judgment, and I don't mistrust your ability to keep people on time and on budget. But if I were, and Molly, I don't mean to step in front of your place here, but if I were the attorney for the commission, I would presume things are going to go wrong. That's just because that's the way you do. I would further presume it's going to be complex and complicated and terrible, and people are not going to get along. Not that we don't, we're going to be efficient and models of excellence. But if, for whatever reason, it wasn't perfection, if I were drafting the contract, I would want the flexibility to require them to provide a finished product, even anticipating inadequacies and vagaries in the way we go about the process.
So I think I understand what you're getting at, and I think I understand what you're getting at. So I think I hear your concern. One is that it sounds like they have, in these tasks, committed to one or two, one in task 4 and one in task 5 public meetings with us. And with our city, we've had contracts with consultants where they commit to only a certain number of public meetings. So I kind of get that, and I hear your concern about the number ratcheting up. I think the ask here is that we are authorizing Jason to use up to $85,000 to get this job done. The way he's proposing to do that is through this process. What the motion that we're making is to authorize him to engage. Let me just read it. Give staff approval to have Plan West partners do the MSRs for a not to exceed amount of $85K. So if it goes south, then he would have to come back to us for an adjustment, and we would at that point have to decide whether we thought it warranted giving him authorization to go further than that. So I think that the ask is whether or not we would authorize Jason to spend $85,000 to do these 2 things through this consultant.
So, Seshi, I agree. The concept, the explicit request is to give approval to have the MSR for San Rafael and Novato for not to exceed amount of $85,000. and for those funds to come from unspent funds from fiscal year 2017, 2018. And that's something I'm okay with, and I'll make a motion to that effect and let them work out the details.
Okay.
Can I also make a suggestion that to also address some of the concerns that we can, presuming you do make that motion, that we beef up the scope to allow for the additional flexibilities of the multiple public hearings, confirm that that will all be within the not to exceed amounts that are proposed. So that to the extent that we need multiple hearings and multiple drafts, that it will be addressed and confirm what we already believe to be the case.
And if you look at the wording now under task 5, it does contemplate multiple drafts.
Quick question on technicalities. Are they going to do the 2 MSRs concurrently or consecutively? Do you know?
That would be a question I would have for you all is, do you have a preference to have one finished before the other? Otherwise, I would let them, for the lack of a better term, have a run at it. Naturally, one is going to beat out the other because of just their staff time and ability. So if you have a preference for one over the other, I can tell them work on this. This one becomes priority. If not, what we will do is they put out a questionnaire, and there's a lot of stuff that they have to get back from the various agencies any which way. So it's kind of like which group gets their stuff back to them first is going to be the one that goes through the process first. So we could go either way. I would yield to you if you have some preferences to how you'd like to see it.
I think there's also, we've talked a lot here about how we want to do MSRs and that we want to do them a little differently than we've done them before, more useful, more value-added, less voluminous. And this is our kind of first crack at it. So I think that I would assume there's going to be some input and reacting once we actually get something.
Yes.
To that point, I personally prefer consecutive as opposed to concurrent. That way we can potentially learn from the first one and implement efficiencies in the second one. I know they're going to have to pull data and go through it. They're going to be somewhat in line, but I'd ask the rest of the commission if there is one region that's preference to give one higher, frankly, the first spot in line. I don't have a preference one way or another.
I would think San Rafael would be the first one.
Okay. I will give them those
I mean,
instructions.
that's how it's been teed up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Works for me.
Okay.
I've already made a motion.
Okay. Well, and Sloan, I mean, I want to just make sure that your concerns are fully addressed.
Sure. Yes, thank you.
Okay. All right. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Seconded by Commissioner Caius. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oh, you know what? Sorry, you guys. I didn't do public comment.
We did public comment.
Hold on a second. Is there any public comment on this item?
To the mic, please. I'm sorry, before she does it, can you rescind the vote so we can reopen public comment?
Okay. Yes. Let's rescind that vote. My apologies.
Does the MSR
Public comment.
include JPAs at all, or is that something else that's done separately? Sorry, Judy Schriebman, Los Ranchitos, Los Ranchitos.
JPAs are an interesting creature for LAFCOs. For the most part, we tend not to have any authority over them, and we have no ability to have them be part of these. There are occasions where a JPA, for various reasons, can fall within LAFCO's scope, and so where there is a JPA that does that, we do it. The 2 MSRs we're talking about, I don't believe have any JPAs involved with them. So for this upcoming year in the San Rafael and Novato area, we would not have any JPAs active.
Any further public comment? All right. Let's do it again. Sloan.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Any opposed? Motion carries. Mala, would you like to report out here?
Yes,
Item 8.
I'd like to talk about both item 8 and item 9. You had labor negotiators, which included the chair and Commissioner Conley, negotiate a employment agreement, and we were able to successfully negotiate that agreement. However, because we weren't able to make the packet, we are recommending that we bring back this item at your December meeting for your consideration and approval. That way we'll have the most transparency. And in addition, because item 9 presumed you were going to approve an agreement at this time, we're recommending item 9 come back also at your December meeting. That would be great.
All in favor?
Public comment.
Thank Thank you for catching me on that. Is there any public comment on this item? Thank you, Damon. Closing public comment. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, Jason, item 10, please. Or Mala.
All right, thank you. Back in 2013, the commission approved personnel policies, and then in 2016, you adopted a new policy handbook. There's some question as to whether the policy handbook superseded the personnel policies, and it was not the intent of the commission to terminate the personnel policy. So as an abundance of caution, we're asking that you reaffirm the 2013 personnel policies. We will be bringing back in the future a comprehensive update, but in the meantime, we'd like you to reaffirm the personnel policies from 2013.
Move to reaffirm the policies.
Hold on, let's not make the same mistake a third time. First of all, any questions on this item? Any public comment? Okay, I'll close the public comment. Hit it.
Okay, I reaffirm the 2013 personnel policies.
Okay, do I have a second?
Move that.
Okay, moved by Vice Chair Murray, seconded by Commissioner Rodoni. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Executive Officer report.
Multiple items in the executive officer report. I'll try and run through them pretty quickly here, stopping where needed. The first two are budget items, are about the budget. The first one is last year's fiscal budget. This will, for all intents and purposes, be the last time I report on it, as our bookkeeper has basically closed out the books. There are two questions that she still had and needed to do some research in. One was around a credit card refund that we got, making sure we understood where that came from and that it was put back in its proper place. And the second was something that came out of the Munis system that she wanted to check in on. So once we have that done, I will, for all intents and purposes, close the books on that, and we will start our annual audit, which we've already signed up the firm based on earlier discussions we had at previous meetings. So that will be done. As you will note in that, we do have a hefty carryover that occurred because of all the changes in staff and not having a full staff on board. So we will use that for future funds, as we did earlier today for our item around plan list.
Sorry, Jason, what is our reserve amount or reserve target?
Our reserve target is not included in the amount that's in the staff report. Our reserve is supposed to be 20% based on our policy handbook, which I, for easy math purposes, say is 120 because our annual budget is about 600. So that is completely separate from what you see in my staff report. You will never see me reporting on that as part of our budget or part of our annual funds. That is the amount of money that I keep is on the books, but is off of any of the records unless we physically need to use it. And I will let you know if we ever have to dip into that for some reason. My goal is to never dip into it, though.
Well, so you could give us our balance sheet, and it would be on the balance sheet.
Yes, it would be on the balance sheet, although one of the things that we will be having a discussion with is how we potentially change our balance sheets around. So it's there, but maybe it's doing more for us than it's currently doing right now, maybe making a little interest for us beyond what it does, and trying to figure out ways to do that. So it is on the balance sheets itself because we don't have separate accounts per se. It's all one huge plot of money.
But you could run the balance sheet and we'd be able to see it there.
Correct. The second item is our budget update for the current fiscal year. As you will see, we are on course to, first off, we have actually received most, but not quite all, of the money from all of our special districts and cities and county. We have gotten, I believe, 96% of the funds that we have asked for them to do have been collected. It's basically four outstanding groups that still need to pay us. I am waiting to get the last month's report from the county, at which point I will see if there's any remaining. If there are, I will send nice letters reminding them to please pay us so we can get that part of our budget finished, collecting all the money that we're supposed to collect. You will also see that we have spent about 20% of our budget so far, which happens this period happens to be for our quarter. So we are a little bit under budget of what we were anticipating spending. That has a lot to do with the fact that we are not fully staffed still yet. While we have consultants, myself and Vita being here and filling in for roles right now, we still are supposed to be 3 FTE, and right now we're basically at 1.5, or a little bit more than 1.5. So we have a little bit of savings there on that front for the current fiscal year as well. Are there any questions on that one? Okay. Oh, I see it.
Jason, just a minor thing. The non-contributing agencies, So those, the delinquent fund balances just carry over the next year, or we wash them at the end of each fiscal year?
Well, we, to my knowledge, we have not ever had a, we have 4 that still need to pay us for the year we're in right now. What we do is start July 1st, and it's not quite the way it works, but starting July 1st, a bill is sent to all of the agencies, and that is the bill for the entire fiscal year. So they send it, so we send them a bill. They're supposed to have 60 days. From what I understand, it's generally courtesy to give everyone 90 days before you actually start down the process of collecting. And like I said, all but 4 agencies, from what I can tell, have actually paid for the current fiscal year we're in now. So it's just a matter of getting those last 4 to do their due diligence and pay the bill. So.
Okay, so any service in those agencies are involved in them that have incentive to?
Yes.
True.
Yeah, I mean, if they hadn't paid us and they came to us with something, clearly we would have a discussion, but from what I understand, it hasn't been an issue in the past. Agencies, once you send them the reminder letter, tend to get their bills paid. It's just something that sometimes slips through the cracks of some of the smaller ones, which is really what we're looking at for the most part. So if there's no other questions on the budget items, okay, then I will go to, as Marin LAFCo policy has it, the chair is authorized to assign committees. You will see in your packet that committees have been assigned. One note, I do want to make sure people are aware of, Commissioner Skelton, you are listed twice. It is the goal that once we have our public seat filled, one of those seats will actually be given to the new commissioner, whether it's the public and alternate. You're filling both seats, so we're giving you two slots to fill for now, but one of those seats will eventually be removed when we have a full contingent here again.
And this is largely the way the committees were constituted before.
This is largely, and also the will of, well, I asked everyone what they wanted to be on, and those that responded were given preference to what committees they got. Those that didn't respond, you didn't respond, sorry. And then we will, of course, add to this, since we just added a new ad hoc committee, we will add that to the list of committees that exist for now. You should have also received, over the last day or two, I believe, from VITA, a request to fill out a doodle poll to tell us what your schedules are like. We want to try and get all of the meetings, the first meeting to occur as quickly as possible. All of the committees, for the most part, have something to talk about, some more than others. So we want to get that first meeting under the belt. That first meeting, we will select the chair and vice chair, and then figure out what the schedule is and what our work plans are for each of the committees when those meet. So if you have not filled out your doodle poll yet, please do so we can get those meetings done. If there's any questions on that one?
I also probably list all the committee dates if anyone wants to take one.
And you should have, yeah, please pass around the date so you can check it off if you haven't done so already. And then the next item on here is an update on the proposals, or active proposals that we have. You'll see that there's no updates on current proposals awaiting approval. We actually have 2 of them. You worked on one last month. The next one will actually, if they do not come to us for a request, is actually due to expire. That's 1 year, comes up in December. So we will either hear from them in December, or you hear from me, they finished their project and they are now done. So we will see what goes on with that. Under current proposals under review, you had 1338, the Cala de la Mesa, up earlier today, so you've got your informational hearing on that. I have been having discussions with the applicant and with, we'll be having a meeting next week, I believe, with the city of San Rafael around 400 Upper Toyon Road, and their request to detach from the city of San Rafael and move over to Ross Valley. From what I understand, San Rafael has some questions that were not addressed earlier in the process, so I'm going to be meeting with their staff to find out what those questions are and trying to address them, figure out how either we move this process forward or let the applicant know that it's not going to be moving forward because it's been stuck for quite a while.
Not Ross Valley, City of Ross.
City of Ross, yes.
Or town, is it town? Town of Ross.
Town of Ross, sorry, my apologies. And then for future items, I did take all 3 of the potential future items that we had on our list for a while and contacted them all and stirred up a little bit of a hornet's nest around the fact that we wanted to know, do they still want to do it or not? One of them has met, and they basically came back with a whole bunch of questions and weren't sure if they still wanted to do it or not. I'm going to be sitting down with staff, with that district staff, to find out, answer their questions, find out what came up, and see if to help them out with that. The second one actually met late last night, and I had not heard today what they decided to do. and the third one meets next week. So once they have met, I will be able to give you an answer as to what that is at the next meeting. And then you will see on the charts that I have actually added the San Joaquin and the Murray Park ones. We are in staff negotiations right now, trying to figure out the history, what's going on, make sure we have all of our ducks in a row, not the unincorporated communities, but the other types of ducks, to make sure that we get, that we have everything and then go out to the public for each of those. This staff's recommendation that we do those as two completely different applications and not try and do them as one. The civil grand jury report, you may remember, said we should do it all as one. They each have unique special issues that need to be addressed, and I want to make sure that they are addressed correctly before we move forward with them. So I'm approaching them as two different things. If it turns out that both of them come at the same time and we're able to do it, we'll remerge them together, but otherwise keeping them separate for now from a staff's perspective.
And that was an early item that you looked at when you first came on
Yes.
with us and did some digging and figured out that they really needed to be separated. And I think you've done some interesting work in that.
Thank you.
In that area that I think was perhaps overlooked previously.
Okay, thank you. Any questions on that?
So Jason, in the chair, vice chair meetings, we'd also talked about modification to show like a target date. So when an application comes in, so we could kind of look at that future target date and make sure there's progress or these folks are moving their applications, rather than kind of saying, hey, these guys haven't been here a year and a half, we need to roll this forward. So anyway, we discussed that. Just want to hear your comments and how that could be incorporated.
The type of which category you're talking about can be a little difficult, because at times when we're moving through the process like we are now with Cala de la Mesa, it's very easy to say, here's what the issues are. We have our meeting here, we then do the next one here, and that's easier. When you're looking at some of the future ones, like Upper Toyon Road, there are a lot of discussion that's been sitting at the city level, and they haven't actually officially submitted that to us. It is still waiting because they're waiting on having discussions with San Rafael about that whole process. So it's sometimes hard for me to necessarily put a target date on some of them. The ones I can definitely try and figure out a way to put it in the chart saying, here's your target dates on these things. Others of them, it's out of our control. We're just sitting here waiting for them to decide to do something. So where I can put target dates, I will make sure to add those into the ones I can.
Great, thank you.
Okay, if there's nothing else on that one, then the next item that I wanted to report on is Cal LAFCo. 3 of us attended that workshop, or the annual stuff in Yosemite area. It was a very good, very interesting 3.5 days, depending on how you want to count it, of activities going on there. Before I forget, I do want to, Marin, while we did not win any awards there, we do have 2 award-winning organizations as part of Marin. Plan West Partners, as I mentioned earlier, did win. George won the award for best staff for his role in some other LAFCOs he does work with. And our legal firm, BBK, won the best associate member group, I believe is the official name of that category, which is basically not a LAFCO, but someone who supports LAFCOs. And our legal firm that we have now on board won this year's award for that category. So while we didn't win directly, I think we won indirectly very well. So wanted to report on that. A lot of the focus of this year's conference, they always have like one focus, was on tree mortality, which doesn't impact us here in the Bay Area as much as it does out in where we were at. There's a lot more tree mortality issues out there, but it was a fascinating learning experience and kind of can show what could happen with climate change. If climate change gets bad enough here, we will also have to be having discussions about tree mortality and what impacts that has on the community, and how LAFCO could potentially play a role in that. So that was like the big thing, but they then had individual meetings and workshops. They had some breakout sessions. I attended. They had 3 breakout sessions per group, so each of us attended a different breakout session to make sure we were getting all the information. The ones I attended, one was on climate change and how LAFCO's role is in that. To be fair, I wasn't as impressed with the presentations on that. It wasn't as the climate change stuff I would be considering climate change. It was more about how cities do planning and a lot of discussion about a new software program that they were talking about during that, which was interesting and fascinating. We have the Marin maps, so what they were talking about isn't as useful for us as it may be for other counties. But they did, the second one I went to was very, I think, very important to us. It talked about websites, it talked about how we do transparency and how we go out and talk to the public about LAFCOs. And I did pick up a lot of good information about that, some of which I will be taking to the technology committee as we have discussions about our website and updating that as well. So I found that one to be very, very useful to us on what we're doing. And one of the things I did find is what we are talking about doing through our workshop is what they were saying we should be doing. So I felt very, very satisfied that we had a good workshop based on that breakout session. And I will yield to the chair and vice chair if they want to add any comments.
Yeah, so there was a kind of a natural disaster theme going. There was an interesting session on, a general session on natural disasters and what LAFCO work there is following a natural disaster. There are often consolidations, annexations, things like that that come up after a natural disaster. Some of the counties that had big fires last year had some interesting things to say about that. A lot of stuff on fire protection district consolidations. That's a big topic around the state. Lots of really interesting ideas in that area. And then there was a general session Q&A with the chair of the Assembly Local Government Committee, Cecilia Aguiar-Curry, which was really informative. The Cal LAFCo executive director is pretty on that. She mentioned also that there might be some coming together of Cal LAFCO and the Special Districts Association and try to get some greater alignment between the two organizations in achieving some legislative targets. So, and it was interesting also just in general to see, I mean, I know that Chris has been to several, has been to one, Craig's been to several, that each LAFCO is really different. And part of the strength of the LAFCO organization is that it was intended that we customize our policies to the particular environment of our particular county. So it is interesting to see that other counties do things very differently and that it is important for us to set our policies that are tailored to this county.
So the state legislator, it was very interesting. The first time ever in Cal LAFCO history took legislation all the way forward to receive funding. I think it was approximately $2 million for special funds as needed amongst the various LAFCOs. So it was approved all the way forward to the governor's desk and then vetoed. So she said she's there for us, and we believed her, and she's going to continue with that. So very soon we may have additional funding source from the state. So that's good news. I agree, each of the LAFCOs kind of have their own flavor. I was in an agricultural breakout session. We reviewed several, for instance, Contra Costa has an urban growth boundary and how they have these fiscal hammers on theirs, and then Ventura has a very interesting approach in terms of their boundaries and these no-growth zones and how all their cities cooperate together in terms of housing developments, and it flows through their LAFCO, so it's very involved, very detailed. So it's interesting to see those. It's good to see LAFCO folks that we know. We all seem to have met and connected with various folks. For instance, we did spend quite a bit of time just by happen chance with the state controller's office, 2 reps that were there, particularly focused on 19 LAFCOs and special districts that need to be consolidated. So they were there to talk to folks about that. I met 2 of the water board folks, both in Northern California and Southern California, on mutual water companies. I know I brought that up in our group before about, hey, how do we get these mutual water companies some light to be shown and shine on them, and also that they provide those documents that we need. So at a Cal LAFCO perspective, we see others and now have contacts from the state that we could touch base. There is also this urban footprint out of Berkeley that had a different approach, and then we've met some folks at the dinner and certainly want to congratulate BKF and BBK in getting the award at this year's LAFCO as well as Plant West. So a good job. Is like 3 years in a row, really amazing for a very small Marin. So it was a good conference, and I think we learned a lot.
One quick thing I just want to add, just for the record, we are not one of the 19 LAFCOs that the state controller's office is looking at. It is other LAFCOs, so anyone that's worried about consolidations, that is not us.
Oh, and 47 out of the 58 LAFCOs were in attendance, so it was a pretty good turnout. All right. Anything else? Jason?
Yeah, the last thing that I just want to give folks a heads up on is we now have our new server up and running. We're still working out a couple of kinks in the system, but you will be in the future, if we get all those kinks worked out by the next meeting, no longer receiving links to a Dropbox. Instead, we will be able to give you a link directly into our server where you will be able to pull up the data. It'll be much easier and quicker for staff, and it'll also give you a long-term library in which you will have access to for future meetings, and you'll be able to go back and look at past meetings. It'll all be in one place. It'll be in our server. You'll have access to look at it. So it's a nice new addition, which I wasn't even aware we were getting when we were getting this server, was this nice little addition to it. One other thing I will note is, as we were replacing the server, the backup battery that we used died. We actually came back from the last LAFCo meeting to a beeping sound in our computer room, and it happened to be the battery. So that while they were replacing our server, I went ahead, because it was a low-cost item, I went ahead and gave authorization to them to also purchase a new battery backup system for it as well. So we have a brand new computer system in place and running, and I'm very excited about that. And that's all I have to report on.
So with this, if you were accessing documents from the server, can you make sure that it's read-only so that people don't inadvertently edit or remove items?
Yes,
Okay,
that will be the case.
okay, great.
Well, you will be able to copy items out of it, but you will not be able to delete them or remove them, correct?
Yeah,
That information, so if someone accidentally does, I can throw in the actual copy again.
Okay.
But I'll double check with Travis on that.
okay, good. All right, any commissioner announcements or requests? No? Do I have a motion to adjourn? Move
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And we adjourn to the December 13th meeting.